G'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by Crowcast. Of course, round 17 against the Dees, and it was a hard-fought win, but very valuable 4 points. So without any further ado, let's crack straight in, shall we? Look at all your beautiful faces there, gentlemen. Welcome everyone to round 17 of the Weekend Wrap. And it was a pretty hard-fought win in the end, but we got there, didn't we? And welcome to everyone who's joined us in the studio audience. 28 of you there, all waiting to go. And don't forget that we're live and interactive, so if you do want to get on and have your say, feel free to do so. Stick your hand up. Also, welcome to everyone who's joining us on YouTube. People filtering in there nicely, which is great to see. So look forward to your chats flowing through as well. Macca, how are you, young man?
I'm sober and sound and well.
Oh, we'll go and have a few drinks and come back. We don't like sober, Macca.
I'm on the water, mate, at the moment, mate.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well, you're no fun. How about you, Brownie? You on the piss?
No, that was last night. Having a quiet one on the cup of tea at the moment. So,
Oh my
all
God! Jeez, that big man, help me out. You on the
I'm having a
mojitos?
glass of white. I'm having a. I wish I love the mojitos. I'm having a glass of white at the moment, mate. So
Glass of
I'm
what?
doing. I'll take one. Yeah, just
Only
nice
marginally better.
chilled Riesling, I think, in the fridge. So
Yeah, I agree with you,
Wow.
Fane.
Yeah, it's only marginally
it's better
better.
than
I
the
think.
water.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to my water in.
No one likes this sober macca. Bring back old tipsy macca. That's what we want. That's what the people want.
Yeah,
I'm
that
sure.
is what the people
Sure.
want. Give the people what they want, mate.
Okay.
God.
No, well, you give it. You always bring it as a surprise. It's a surprise to me too.
Well,
Um,
look, we had to struggle through a pretty hard-fought win today. Look, you blokes were pretty negative in the pre-season chat just then, precast chat. So tell me all about it, Brownie. What you were there at the game? What'd you think?
I think it was a game of two halves, but the first half, especially the first quarter and the first half of the second quarter, it was just frustrating. Our disposal inside 50 was a combination of bad disposal, and even our forwards didn't seem switched on, and the forwards were reacting to the bad kicks and getting in position a lot quicker, and it just looked like we just weren't switched on mentally, I don't think. But yeah, things turned around, which is good, and we got the 4 points in the end. But it was frustrating to watch, and a bit below the standard that we've set the last few weeks.
Yeah, it wasn't as fluid as we've been. Big man, what were your preliminary thoughts?
I'm actually going to be a bit on the positive side here, because I know it was obviously a bit of a sloppy game with our forward entries in the first half were terrible. But the fact that we got 5 goals down, that game in any other year under Nick's the Nick's regime, that game was done basically. But for us to fight it out, and not just fight it out, but actually get within a goal or less than a goal at half time, when things were going so poorly, I was actually really impressed by that. I think that's it's just something we wouldn't have done previously. So obviously we didn't close out the game quite as well as we would have liked. We sort of kept them in it and just fumbled around for a quarter and a half. But for the most part, not every win's going to be silky smooth and everything. I think it was actually I don't know if I'd call it a character building win, but for me, we actually got over 2 hurdles today, and that was one, the demons, we just haven't matched up well against them, and that seemed to be the case early on as well today. But then to also fight from a deficit, I think it's the first time we've done it under Nick's. I might be wrong, or at least the second time
31
maybe.
games. 31 games. since we last won a
Is that right?
game from 4+ goals back.
Okay. So it's a fair effort, and obviously Melbourne aren't going game busters, but I always thought this was a danger game anyway. So glad to get the 4 points, but also glad that to do it in the way we did, because it showed a bit of character and something. Yeah, as I said, I don't think we would have had the ability to do that previously.
Waterboy, what do you think?
I thought Big Man summed up pretty well. There were some positives that came out of the game, and
You were the most negative of the lot beforehand.
Well, give me time. We'll get there. But no, look, the positive was that we did come out of a situation that we normally don't come out of. And, I was despairing, halfway through that second quarter. Then, for some reason, we did get a few goals. But, we showed a bit of character in the second half. But that first half, the reason we got in the trouble that we did get into, I mean, our entries into the forward line were an absolute disgrace. And
yeah,
I mean, seriously, when you just put it up high and short, but that was the biggest problem. And we've got our big guys half the time not leading and standing stationary. It was just a combination. I think the forwards have to take some rap for it, and the people delivering the ball. It was just made to be cleared every time our entries were there. They were just farcical. And I mean, Thilthorpe possibly played his worst game for many, many a long day in his Guernsey, and I don't think he'll ever play that poorly again. He didn't have a big one, but in that first quarter, the forwards, as I said, they weren't moving, and our delivery was terrible. It was just a batsman's delight. But look,
you blokes are bloody taking the piss, aren't you? Like, we're not playing against traffic cones. Like, hang on a minute. Like, Melbourne on a good day are a good side, and they set up well, and it took us a while to adapt to the fact that they were playing off their man in defence. They weren't actually playing body to body in defence. They were playing off their man, and I don't think it was our forwards' fault so much as our mids and blokes delivering it into forward 50 didn't recognise that the space was actually over the back. So,
which it was. Yes.
Stephen May and Jake Lever were playing deliberately 10 metres in front of their opponents the whole time. And we just needed to be able to lift the eyes. And the first bloke to see it was Fogarty when he hit Rankine. It got it over the back.
Spot on, Payne.
That
is spot on.
I mean, that's the way that Melbourne played. And I think the biggest issue that we had in the first half was a distinct lack of intensity around the contest. They were miles up in clearances and uncontested possessions. We weren't pressuring them with the ball. We were allowing them to get territory. And we were just playing off them. We weren't intense enough. And then about halfway through the second quarter, we started to click into gear, and our clearances started to lift, and we started to be able to play that high defensive game that we play and get repeat entries. And from then on, it was a pretty good contest, I thought.
Oh, look, I couldn't argue with what you said there, Payne. I mean, it is true. You've actually gone into a little bit more detail of why the disposals were poor, and normally our forwards don't generally play that way. But like you said, Lever and May created that situation, as you said, by playing well in front of them instead of alongside of them. And we seemed to be just targeting them all the time. And it was really very, very frustrating. And your point about the one that Fogarty did over the back just illustrated it very clearly. And then it seemed to click with the other players. But look, in the end, we did win the game. So not totally negative, just if you're going to play like that against the Bulldogs, we probably won't get a second chance. That's all.
Yeah, look, I guess so. Brownie, at the game, was it evident that things changed halfway through the second quarter? It looked to me like we started to win a little bit more contested ball, and that allowed us to not give away so much ground in terms of field position. Was that evident watching it on the ground, at the ground?
Yeah, I think there was a change in our intensity definitely sort of at the ball, and our intensity at protecting the ball coming out of our forward line. They started to get a lot of useless sort of uncontested possession, kicking backwards, sideways, and their uncontested possession count. They were talking at halftime. They were on track to get 100, and when they get 100, they never lose. But there was so much cheap ball they just purely couldn't find an avenue out. So once we got our zone worked out, and our intensity was up a bit, we were a heap better. And then it's just the old Crows. We just needed that one goal to spark us, and we kicked back into gear. So the second half of that second quarter was really good. It was completely different to the first part of the game.
Yeah. 10 minutes into the second quarter, I thought we were going to get flogged if things didn't change, because we were getting absolutely destroyed, weren't we, big man, around the ball, and we couldn't really get our hands off. I think like for the first 10 minutes of the second quarter, it was something like 50 odd disposals to 10 or something like that. It was crazy. We just couldn't get our hands on it. But I really like the fact that in a game that we had to win, that we should win, but that we needed to win against a side that can be a little bit up and down, but certainly have some fantastic players when they all play well. To be able to turn it around, I think, was a real positive for us.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's funny, that first quarter, I thought our intensity defensively wasn't great, but I thought around the ball we were okay. Transition was pretty good, but we were just turning it over constantly. We had an amazing ability to kick it straight down Stephen May's throat. But that first half of that second quarter, we just lost the plot. We just couldn't get our hands on it. We were getting smashed around the ball. We were getting smashed in the air. It's probably the worst football it might be the worst football we've played all year, or it'd be close. So thankfully we turned it around. And as you guys said, like, it was interesting. They clearly went in with the plan to kick it around, chip, sideways, backwards, that they had to, and that was working for them quite a bit. And they often got pretty much uninterrupted transition from defence to the forward line, even if it took like 6 or 7 kicks. Yeah. Because we just couldn't seem to close up space. It just constantly, there was a guy free on their team just to take the next kick. But you notice, especially in the second half, they would keep trying to do that, but then they were forced into the long kick down the line, off half back on down the wing, and it wasn't working for them as much anymore. And we started taking more intercept marks and started positioning ourselves better. So clearly something changed there. And what was working for Melbourne absolutely in the first half, it sort of worked against them in the second half, because they were still sort of playing a similar style of football. If they didn't win it out of the centre, then most of their method of transition was from half back, and it was really slow. And it sort of felt like they were almost trying to save the game. If they were playing like a team that was in front, but they were actually a few goals behind. So it didn't quite work out for them. And good on the coaches and the players for adjusting, because we needed to adjust. It was getting out of hand, and also that just comes to lifting intensity. As I said, that first 15 minutes of the second quarter, that we were way off the pace, and that game was almost shot. So for them to quickly get going, which sort of, as soon as that Curtin did that great sprint down the wing and got to Rankine from memory, it sort of sparked us, and we went from there. So it's sort of a as I said, it's a different way to win. Not every win is sexy. This is just another way to go about it. I agree, against other better teams, it's not going to help. Like, we can't afford that sort of lapse against better teams. But each game's different. I think in the context of the game, it was actually quite a good win.
Yeah, no, agreed. Let's just quickly refresh people's memories for the score, and it was 13-12-90 to 11-11-77. Both teams had periods of inaccuracy, and some would say that Melbourne kept us in it with their inaccuracy early on, but we didn't do ourselves any favours at times during the game either. Just a quick look at the AFL stats. You can see that disposals 325 to 392 their way, kicks 199 to 222, handballs 126 to 170. Disposal efficiency, surprisingly even, 73 to 74%. Inside 50s, we won that 55 to 42. but efficiency inside 50, not surprisingly, 46%. I reckon it would have been down at around 20% at one stage to their 57. Marks inside 50, 17 to 8. So once we actually did get things sorted out, we were quite effective taking marks inside forward 50. Centre clearances, 14 to 9. I think at one stage it was 0-5. So to get that to a +5 outcome is pretty good. Stoppages 19 to 18, so fairly even there. Hit-outs 41 to 28. I thought O'Brien did okay against Gawn. Contested possessions 129 to 133, so we certainly squared that up in the end as well. Uncontested possessions, Melbourne had the sort of count that we have normally when we play that outside game, 191 to 252. 82 marks to 110 just shows that they were chipping the ball around a lot. Turnovers 81 to 79, and tackles 53 apiece. So it was obviously evident from the stats there that the eyes didn't lie, that they were just chipping around. But it just shows that once we get our zone worked out and we start getting into a position where we can push our defenders up the ground a bit, Brownie, we can start forcing turnovers. And as Big Man said earlier, they were starting to find it very difficult to break through once we got that sort of field position going.
Yeah, I think that's been our real strength this year, is when we get the zone right, we're bloody hard to get through. Yeah. And I think teams are finding it really challenging. That the thing is, keeping it up for 4 quarters is the hard thing. And we've had a couple of games where, the coaches against us, like Sam Mitchell, employed a bit of a change in tactic and got us on the fly.
Yeah.
But generally, it's been working really well. And apart from a little period today, there was a little period, like Big Man said, where they always just had that one spare, but they still weren't really making a lot of ground until most of the time they had to eventually take that long field kick.
Yeah, I don't have the more comprehensive stats yet because they don't come up in time when we play on Sundays. But it seemed to me like it wasn't until they started forcing a few turnovers in the sort of centre half of the ground, Mac, that they were starting to get any sort of inside 50s at all. They certainly weren't getting it on transition after half time.
I think after half time, I thought our mids did a very good job from there on in. In particular, I thought Soligo, he played a very good game. I think that a lot of people underestimate his game. I think he worked bloody hard.
Actually, his best game for a while, I reckon, Macca. You're right.
Yeah, and Peatling, he's got tons of courage and he's got a bit of toe. I thought those two in particular, and Dawson as well, added a couple of nice clearances as well. And I thought that really that against Gawn as a ruckman, Rob did a fairly good job. In fact, he surprised me. I thought he had really had the better of Gawn on the day, and I think the stats indicate that.
It was Gawn's second worst rated game for the year, so that's pretty good effort.
Oh, thanks for that. Well, that justifies what I'm saying. I was very pleased with O'Brien, and I thought we benefited from that, and I think the work effort of our mids was very, very good. I mean, Berry wasn't as stand out as much as the other two, but he still worked his arse off. And I thought we lack a little bit in quality in the mids compared to some of the very, very good teams, but we certainly don't lack in effort. I thought those boys acquitted themselves very well, Fane.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Mac. I thought our midfield, after a slow start, really pulled their fingers out and started to compete more at ground level and force more secondary ball-ups and didn't allow them to get on the outside as easily as they were at the beginning. I thought Berry's game actually was quite good. I think he had a run with on Pickett when he was in the middle, and at times on Viney, I think, as well. They were trying to get Clary to Dawson, and I think he did all right on Dawson, but Dawson can just expose you like in field play, can't he? Just with his marking and his ability to play around the ground. So I think that really exposed him, his ability to get around the ground. And once we started getting that wraparound at the centre bouncers, that was working a treat.
Yeah, look, I was really happy with the midfield, and look at before the game started, I thought, well, Gordon will probably be just too tall for Rob, and he'll be directly at here and directly at there, and that didn't eventuate. In fact, I thought Rob would have got more touches than Gordon, and they had quality players in there, and Pickett was the one that bothered us the most because he's got that electric pace, but. Overall, I was happy with the way. Look, you always have to concede that somebody like him is always going to get some ball. He's always going to, and he's always going to do something that is good and freakish. It's like Rankine. Rankine's, just know they're going to do something, so you have to accept that. But to minimise it, I thought our guys did that, and I thought they were. I was very happy. Now that they'll have a new challenge next week, but they certainly stepped up the challenge this week.
Now, obviously, we had one worrying thing, which was Rash's knee. I don't think we've had any official word from the club as to what that is. Initially, it looked pretty bad, but maybe just a hyperextension leading to maybe a bit of a strained PCL or something like that. Big man, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you I listened to the start of Nixie's presser just before this, and I thought he sounded a bit flat, I'm not going to lie, but he wasn't giving much away. He said there was enough there to be concerned about, so that worries me a little bit. Yeah, those landing ones are interesting. They can go either way. Sometimes the ones that look really bad often aren't actually ACLs. They're just bone damage or some other ligament. It's usually the ones that turn a direction where you're just like, oh, that's an ACL. So this one could be anything. We saw Jenkins a few years ago, had a similar one for us, and he went down and played like 2 weeks later. But we also saw Nick Murray have a sort of a similar one a couple of years ago on the MCG, and that turned out to be an ACL. So he got it pretty quick. By the end, he was jogging off. I never done an ACL myself, but usually players are in a lot of pain for about 5 to 10 minutes, but then actually can walk and move around reasonably easily. I feel like he recovered pretty quick, but I'm not a doctor, so look, it sucks because not only it sucks because he's a great young player for us, but also he's sort of a big part of that spark and energy. And when we didn't have him in those few weeks with the ribs early in the year, I thought we really felt his loss. Yeah. It just gives us a different look, and I know he wasn't going gangbusters today, but he's on his day he's as dangerous as pretty much any other small forward going around. So. Yeah, I'm pretty flat about it. Let's hope for the best, but obviously we'll have to work out what we do. There's a few guys in the reserves that can play a similar role, but they're not as good as Rash, unfortunately.
Well, obviously, Brownie, the bloke that is there in the wings waiting to step up, was Lachlan Murphy, and we're not going to say anything negative about Lachlan Murphy. What I will say, though, is he had -2 Supercoach points for the game in a half of football. And I think at one stage he had more turnovers than... No, what did he have? He had something... I don't know. We can't persist with Lockie, surely. Jeff?
Nah, I reckon that experiment's surely been done now, and we've seen. I
don't think it's an experiment. I don't think it's an experiment, mate. I like.
It's bias.
Nick's came out during the week and was talking about things that we don't see, that people don't see on the ground, and blah 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 blah. Like he goes for kamikaze balls that he shouldn't go for. He just about took out Izak Cumming. He just about took out Darcy Fogarty. Just about killed himself a couple of times. Like, he's obviously trying as hard as he possibly can, and no one can ever take that away from him. But he is simply not good enough. He's simply not good enough. And I don't know what the deal is. I can't work it out. I've looked at it from every angle possible. I can't work it out. He had absolutely no impact on the game whatsoever for a half of a game. No impact at all.
you could probably argue he had a negative impact because I think he was actually trying too hard because he's had all this pressure on him, all this negative feedback that he's getting, and it's obviously getting to him. And he just jumped at contests that it was just trying too hard, and I think he had one kick and one handball for the game. No real effective possessions. It clearly, and he had half a game of football. So
Yeah.
it clearly isn't working, and they've obviously got to address that this week. I don't think that even Nix can look past that performance this week. He's going to have to look at who's been playing well on the twos and look at his options.
Well, you'd hope a bloke like Pedler comes back in over Lockie Murphy, surely.
Logic says it. Look, anybody who's not biased would think that. But selecting Murphy is biased by the coach, and look, he has to live and die by what he does. And I know that I don't want to turn this into, and I won't turn it into a Murphy bashing session because he doesn't.
No, well, it's not his fault. It's not his fault, and he tries his guts out. No one can argue that, Matt. You're right, 100%. This is not a bash on Lockie Murphy. He just shouldn't be in the side.
Yeah, no, it's a criticism of the coach because his stats were one kick, one handball, one mark, one tackle, and but also a couple of frees against. So as you said, negative points if you assess his whole game. Super coach, that sort of thing. Look, if it's done fairly, done on form, he doesn't get picked. He's a favourite for some reason, and so he gets opportunities that other players don't get, and I don't understand why. And but as I said, that's not his fault. He doesn't pick himself. The coach picks him. So.
I also, am I the only one who thought it was strange that we had the 3 emergencies and Miller was delayed out, but Hugh Bond was one of the emergencies, wouldn't he? Be like a defender for a defender? I just thought that was strange. I don't understand.
No, I did too.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a missed opportunity in itself.
No, quite right.
Well, that would have been the obvious one. Bond in for Miller. Smith off half back with Hinge, and Bond and Laird taking the smaller options. I don't know. I reckon Hugh Bond would have enjoyed the opportunity to have a run with Pickett. Actually, would have been a great experience for him. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know. There's not one angle that I can look at. No argument that I've seen. Not that there's been many put up in favour of Lockie's selection, but nothing that I can see that it's just baffling. It's just baffling.
Defies logic. Every other player, you can argue their position in the team is justified, and then we just have this one oddball that keeps recurring. And look, as I said, and in the long run, it's on Nix's head. He's the one that keeps picking in, and he's got that authority. We don't, so he has to be accountable for what he does. And what Nix gets for this week, he gets mud in his eye for a rotten pick, a rotten selection. The guy just didn't perform.
Yeah. And look, we need to hope for the best with Rash. Obviously, there didn't look to be a lot of lateral movement in the hyperextension. It looked to be a pretty vertical sort of thing. So I'm kind of hopeful, but
yes,
I don't know.
I'm in the same camp as you, Fiend. I didn't see it. I watched very closely for any lateral movement, and I couldn't see any lateral movement. So there was a definite hyperextension backwards, but. I think the moment it might save him, and I know it's hope, that the fact that there was no sideways movement just might mean that he might get away with it. Let's hope anyhow.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look at a couple of players. Oh, where's my little? There it is. Good to see a return to form of Izak Rankine. 16 touches, 4 marks, 4 tackles, 5 goals, 1, 3 inside 50, 7 score involvements. 10 contested possessions. He played a little bit more through the middle after half-time. 332 metres gained. Probably, I would say, his best game for at least a month, wouldn't you say, big man?
Who's this? Sorry again. Sorry, I didn't cut out.
Ranks.
Oh,
Rankine.
yeah. So, sorry about that. Yeah, he was excellent. He was. I mean,
What are you
in a way,
doing
he
in the
was the difference,
background?
wasn't he?
What's going on in the background?
Hey?
That sounds like it might be more interesting than the footy. What's going on? What's distracted you so?
Nothing happened. I know I've had a couple of net issues tonight, so hopefully it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's why you haven't got the camera on.
You rattled me, right? Look, I would say he was the difference maker, wasn't he? He got us going in that third quarter.
Oh, Ranks, yeah.
Rankine. Yeah. We're talking about it. And it was good to see him dominate a game. We haven't really seen him do that for a little while. He's sort of been playing here and there, and without really having massive games. Obviously, he's played through the midfield quite a bit, but today he was up forward quite a lot. And we know how deadly he is around goals when he's in form. Like lately, he's been a bit shoddy in front of goal, but he was clinical today, and he kicked all sorts of goals. He was taking marks. He was kicking around the body. He was just doing a whole lot of things. So he was so efficient today with his ball use in general. And I'm right for him. Like he's one of our stars, and we need our stars to play well. And like I said, he's been a bit down, not terrible by any means lately, but he's been a little bit down. I think we can all agree. But that was big. That was big for him today.
Yeah, it looked like as you say, when he gets his first shot straight, and it wasn't an easy shot that he had to kick. It was one of those niggly ones that he tends to miss first up, Brownie. It tends to lift him a bit, and he certainly had his kicking boots on today. But I actually thought that it was his best game around the midfield for a while too. Once he got into the midfield a bit, he was looking pretty sharp and got a couple of nice clearances.
Yeah, he was just moving really smoothly again, and his, like I think Big Man said, his disposal efficiency was really on song. But I think for me, when his confidence is up, that's like you see it in the forward line. Like this year, he's probably kicked 1 out of 3 a lot of weeks.
Yeah.
And when he's going, like this week, he got 5 out of 6. When he's going, his conversion in front of goal, especially on the run around the body, is fantastic. And he was back to that today. And with Rash potentially being out for a few weeks, it's going to be vital that he's actually kicking a few goals, because he has been a little bit disappointing in terms of conversion. So if he's back, that'll be a great thing.
Yeah, agreed. Now, don't forget, we are live and interactive, so those of you in the audience, if you do want to come on and have something to say, feel free. Just stick your hand up there and I will get you on. The other bloke that I thought had a really good game today was James Peatling. 25 touches, 6 clearances, 483 metres gained, 6 inside 50s, 5 score involvements and 11 contested possession. I probably thought this was his best game out of a pretty good batch of games, just because he seemed to be prepared to run through traffic a little bit more rather than kick at the first opportunity, Big Man.
Yeah, it's like, look, and this is the thing, as when new players come to your club, you sort of learn the ins and outs of their game, and that's probably one thing, is that he does have a tendency at times to just throw it on the boot, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. Other times you just wish you showed a little bit more finesse. But today, I think I agree. Whether that was by hand or actually, working his way through traffic, he definitely showed a few
really nice steps in at times to get through traffic.
And look, it probably helps that Melbourne, Posy aside, don't have the quickest midfield. But I think the more and more I watch him, I just think this guy's suited to high stakes contested footy. He just loves the rough stuff, and I think he thrives on that. He's a bit like Sloaney back in the day. The more the tougher and rougher it is, the more he enjoys it. And I think he's still got another level to go to at some point. But I thought his energy around the contest was really good. I think as a group, the boys in there, none of them had massive days with numbers or anything like that, but we actually beat them in clearances, like you said. And Peatling was obviously a part of that. Soligo was good again. better than the last few weeks, and Berry's doing his part, and obviously Dawson was pretty good too. So, but I think he was probably the standout of the bunch, without obviously having a massive game.
You would have been happy, Macca? He's your boy.
Yeah, he's my boy. As I've said many times, I watched him play with GWS and watched him. He only started really growing in the second half of last year. He's been around for a little while, but it's all started to come together for him at the last half of last year. I was absolutely thrilled when we got him. Absolutely thrilled, because he's still not the finished article that he's going to be. There's a lot more improvement still in him, I think. And look, there's no player in the team that's got more courage than him. He's got pace, and when he's out in the open, he can use the ball well as well. And look, I think he's going to be an extremely good, valuable player for us. And today he's certainly high up in our best today. And big man summed it up well. He's just got no fear. He just goes in hard, and if he gets hit hard, he gets up and he goes in hard again. He's got no limit. He'll just keep going and going. And of the three players that we did get, I think he's the best of them by far.
He's certainly been the best performed this year, I think. And I really like the fact that his composure is starting to grow. As I said, he's starting to back himself in to get through a bit of traffic rather than just kicking it around the corner. That means that he can bring other players into the play, and a couple of handballs that he fed through, a couple of the bounce handballs that he did were pretty good. That seemed to be high up on his menu this week, but they all were pretty effective. And the comparison to Sloaney, big man, was really good, I reckon, because he plays very much like that, bit of a bull at a gate, energizer sort of player, and if we get as much output out of him as we got out of peak Rory Sloane, we will have done very, very well out of that trade.
He's not as good as a mark, but he's very similar in other ways.
Yeah, very true. All right. Pardon me, just a couple of others. As you mentioned, Geordie Dawson, after a slow start, worked his way into the game and made himself difficult for Melbourne in key moments. Had 25 disposals, 13 kicks and 12 handballs, 4 marks, 7 tackles, 418 metres gained. Interestingly, I can't remember which commentator it was, but finally someone has just called him out on his disposal by foot, which I think is valid. I think it's something that he can work on. Because he is his disposal efficiency is 72%, but that I don't think I'd like to see his effective disposals, effective kick stat rather than just his disposal efficiency. I reckon that'll be down a bit, but 5 score involvements. 5 score involvements, 8 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s. But there's times I just feel like there's a breakdown in his technique, Brownie, or something. He gets under the ball at times, or he scuffs it on the inside of his foot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a technique thing, because this year he's been, he's still, done some beautiful disposals, but he hasn't been consistent. If you look at Curtin's kicking action compared to Dawson's, Curtin's got a beautiful, pure, just straight, the leg goes straight through, and he hardly ever misses. He just flushes everything. Whereas Dawson is a little bit hit or miss. Like, his best is fantastic, but he does, he's probably, around that sort of 50-50 really when you watch him under pressure. So I think that's probably an area of his game that he can probably work on. But I do think you're right. I think it's a technical thing. And he was probably a bit better last year, I reckon.
He actually brings the ball up from a bit high, and that's something that's crept in, I think, at times. And sometimes he actually gets caught with it because he's bringing the ball up, bringing the ball down to his boot from fairly high up. I'd like to see him get over the ball a little bit more and be a little bit more compact with his kicking action, Macca. You're right, after your little medical procedure there.
Yeah, I got them. Suffering a bit of dry eye today.
Well, thanks for sharing it with us.
Well, you noticed it.
Yeah.
No, look. Generally, he's a pretty good kick, but he's not the perfect lefty. Most lefties are very, very smooth, and look, he's a good kick generally, but sometimes he does raise the ball a little higher before he guides it down to the foot, which always has that little bit of a margin for error.
He does that, sort of brings it up before he drops it down, sort of thing.
Where you mentioned Curtin, if you want look at Curtin, it's really virtually putting it onto the foot, and you couldn't get a better kicking action than Curtin's actually. But look, what I love about Dawson, he's got to be, for his size, the best mark overhead in the competition, and yet the same guy is very tough to beat when the ball's at ground level as well. So, like he's a value player, and he's fearless, and he's prepared to work very, very hard. And you can put him in. You can put him in the forward line. You put him in the back line. You can play him on the ball. I don't know. There's another player in the competition that can play the roles that he does. I was thinking about it before, not tonight, but during the week. Like you could play him up in the forward line when you really need a score. You can put him down back when you're really under pressure. You can play him on the ball to get some drive. Can you name another player that can do that? I can't. I can't think of one that can do it as good as he does it.
Very versatile, yeah. And against Oliver, he was able to shake that tag a little bit by getting around the ground and make himself difficult. At one stage, he was up forward and, taking marks on the wing and all that. He's not just, Oliver was very much a grunt player, but Dawson is far more rounded and versatile and made himself very difficult for Oliver to play on. As we said before, I thought Soligo's game was pretty good today as well. 21 disposals, 6 marks, 6 tackles, 6 clearances, nearly 400 metres gained. I felt like Jake was staying in the contest a little bit more this week. His second and third efforts around the ground ball were pretty good, and he was very intent on putting pressure on Brownie, and it seemed to me like he was running on top of the ground. As I was going to say, I think Dawson was as well this week. I reckon Dawson might have been carrying something because he looked a little bit stronger through the body, like when he was breaking tackles or running through traffic. Just looked a little bit stronger, Brownie, as well.
Yeah, and I know you've said you thought the last few weeks that Soligo didn't look like he was quite moving as well. Yeah. But yeah, today he was like you say, pushing through, seemed to have that core strength, and his repeat efforts were fantastic. I thought his disposal was really, really good today. Like I'm a bit of a fan of his disposal, but I thought today he was really, really on point. His was a great effort.
And he's got a really good step too. When he gets inside players, he's got a nice little side step that catches blokes out. It's really really good. Good to see him hitting some form as well. Key's relatively quiet, although he had the 24 disposals, but probably not as we're starting to expect quite a bit from Benny Keys. 14 kicks, 10 handballs, 397 metres gained. 2 goals, 3. Yeah, but he didn't, did he?
No, but 24 and 2, that's pretty good.
I thought he missed a couple today that he'd normally kick, like that he'd normally ice without a problem at all. And I thought a few of his kicks inside 50 were pretty scrappy. I didn't think it was his best game, but he competed really well. Like no problem with his effort, but I just don't think he was as clean.
No, he only had 6 inside 50s and 11 score involvements. What are you talking about, big man? He was quiet.
Campo gave him the 2 votes, Finn.
Yeah, but Camporelli's weird when it comes to his votes.
He loves numbers. Loves the numbers, the stats, Campo.
Yeah. I think they all do down at Crowsville.
Jonathan Brown. Jonathan Brown doesn't think it was 2 goals. He thinks it was 1, mate. I watched the last quarter. He would not stop going on about that touch behind.
It was a pain in the ass of that.
No, he was genuinely right. He was genuinely correct.
Okay, say it once and then shut up.
Are we going to
No.
talk about the deliberates from at each end as well today, or are we not going to talk about that? Like everything,
Yeah, I know, that
things
was-
happen in games.
Yeah, no, but I can see Brownie's point because John O'Brown, that is, not the inimitable Brown that we have on our podcast.
The better Brown.
I can see his point because if you're going to have a bloody score review, you may as well get it right. And they weren't looking at the right part of the contest because they were looking at the part after it was touched. And it was quite clearly touched. Quite clearly it was touched. So, you know,
I didn't think that.
it was clearly touched. The bloke that came
No, I
from
disagree.
the other side of the goal, no, it was clearly touched. There was no doubt about it.
How could you see that thing?
Because the ball changed.
On that side.
Yeah, but they did afterwards, and the ball changed direction. But they never reviewed that side of it.